everybody. Thanks for watching. Now, when Rome's authority on Christianity began to be challenged, when the papacy began to be challenged, then we had the Crusades. Now, a lot of people believe that the Crusades was about getting rid of Muslims. And if you look up the explanation of why the Crusades happened, that's what it says. It says that they wanted to wipe out Muslims in the Holy Land. Now, it also says that, they wanted to wipe out paganism. They wanted to stomp out heresy and try to resolve conflicts between rivaling church groups. And to also, get political and territorial gain. So if it really was about wiping out Muslims, then, we still have Muslims in Jerusalem today. They are still there. And if you read the Bible, the Jews was promised Israel. So it's weird that these Muslims have been basically in control, for so long. Now, when you go through the whole story about the Crusades, we know about Pope Urban II, who basically told the Knights Templars that, if you guys go and fight in the Holy Land to take it back, then God will basically forgive you of all sins. You basically get a free ticket, into heaven if you go and fight. Now, for anybody who reads the Bible, we already know about how the Jews went through so many wars. They fought through so many different peoples to basically gain control of the Holy Land. And God basically promised them the Holy Land. Well, he didn't really promise them the Holy Land. He basically said, well, here's your inheritance. This is yours. I give you this land. This is a gift from me to you. All you got to do is go in there and kill everybody, and then it's yours. So that's basically what he says. So when you read Deuteronomy 20:16 and 17, it says, but the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth. That's crazy. But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. And don't forget the Girgashites, which they killed later on. That's not mentioned here, but the Girgashites are descendants of the Canaanites, but they wiped them out too. And the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. If God was behind the followers of his faith, or the people who really was, fighting for God, why didn't he basically, see them succeed? Why did they fail? Why did they not take back the Holy Land from the Muslims? So now when you read in Deuteronomy, and it's Deuteronomy 7:1-2, it says, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when thy Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. So basically, when you read in the Bible, you have, every time there was some kind of like a holy war, a religious war, God had his people's backs. He had the Israelites' backs. So the Pope basically is supposed to be, this dude, who really is connected with God. So you would think that when they went to go wipe out the Muslims, if that's what the Crusades was about, you would think that God would actually have their backs to go ahead and take back this Holy Land that he basically promised to the Jews, because they went through so much to get it, according to the Bible, which we can't prove none of this stuff never happened. So they went through so much in the Bible to get the land. You would think that God would not allow another people to basically take it over, and he promised the Jews this land. He didn't say nothing about them having to share the land with Muslims. I don't see Muslim or Islam or these other people in the Bible. That is highly debated, by the way. But you would still think that this God of the Bible would have made sure that they had that land to themselves. So you still have Muslims in Jerusalem today. Now, when you go back and look, you have Abdul Malik, who basically conquered the Byzantines in Syria, then invaded Jerusalem, built the Dome of the Rock, started to spread Islam, which basically uses the prophets of Roman Catholicism. And he did all this within the 7th century CE. Now, the Dome of the Rock basically was finished around, I think it was 691 CE, and he already started to get coins, struck with his face on it. He did all this in the 7th century CE. So, why would Rome wait, all the way to the 10th century CE to do something about the Muslims? They was already in Jerusalem so long ago. Hundreds of years would pass before they would decide to take action. Why would the papacy wait so long? And I went into this before. We all know about the Crusades. Everybody know about the Pope's use of the Knights Templar. So again, how could they be going out to wipe out Muslims when you have Muslims who was in the Knights Templar? Something that a lot of people don't realize, they can't fathom back then, because a lot of people associate the Templars with Rome, with Roman Catholicism, with Christianity. So the fact that they had Muslims in the Knights Templar shows you that it couldn't really been about Muslims. Now, when you read here, and I went through this before, it says, authentically, the original Knights Templar rejected the idea of the Crusades as supposedly being to eliminate Muslims or eradicate Islam. This historical fact is proven by the Temple Rule of 1129 AD, in which the Templar order criticized that the Crusades did not do what it should, that is, to defend, but strove to plunder, despoil, and kill. It clearly specified that the only real purpose of the Templar warfare was to remove from the land enemies of Christ, not to kill Muslims. And the original Latin says only to strike enemies, proving no specific intent to kill. Quite contrary to a popularized misconception, the Templars fully understood that Muslims were not necessarily enemies, that the real enemies of Christ could be even evildoers pretending to be Christians, and that the enemies of Christ were generally the same as the enemies of Islam. Indeed, evildoers are essentially the enemies of all faith, opposed to the principle of religion itself, and are thus the enemies of God. Therefore, the Templars were never crusaders against Muslims, and did not agree with any such philosophy. Rather, the Knights Templar were holy warrior monks fighting for good against evil, regardless of which religion may or may not be involved. The most conclusive evidence that Muslims were, in fact, accepted in membership in the Knights Templar order was codified in the Temple Rule of 1129 AD, which was expanded by the later hierarchical rules added from circa 1150 to 1250 AD. One key amendment, circa 1200 AD, specifically provides if a brother goes out from the house and enters into another religion, it would do no harm if he returns to rejoin the house, but he will not be held by anything to that religion, nor to us also, for he has returned from the one and from the other. This was a major confirmation that a Templar could be a Muslim or even convert to Islam and remain entirely in good standing within the Templar order, declaring a principle of no conflict and non-competition with Islam. The Muslim Knight is only required to not to violate Templar rules, as is equally not obligated to do anything which would violate a doctrine of the other religion. So basically saying, if you're a Christian, you can't violate the Muslims either. So the fact that such a rule was added is compelling evidence that the Grand Mastery had even permission to admit Muslims in many such cases over the years, giving rise to the necessity of codifying the amendment. The mere existence of this rule proves that the Templars' authenticity regarded all religion as fundamentally compatible and rejected the idea that doctrines or different religions could ever really be in conflict. And this is something that you see in Masonry. So in Freemasonry, you see that they take all religions, which is why you have the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible on the altar in every Masonic lodge. So we know Knights Templar secret society. And when you really try to mash it together, when you get into it with bringing in the Shriners and Freemasonry, you can see where it all goes at, as I get into in previous videos. So we know that the Egyptian Sultan, General Saladin, was one of the Knights Templars. He has a statue in the Cairo Museum with him dressed in a full Templar uniform. You also have Templum Domini, which is basically what the Knights Templar called the Dome of the Rock. Same Dome of the Rock that Abdul Malik had built, which is an Islamic shrine. So again, you can look at these coins and see that they had these coins struck. One side you have the seal or the crest of the Knights Templar. On the other side you have the actual Dome of the Rock. So you can see that, there's no way. How could they be fighting the Crusades against Muslims when you have Muslims in the Knights Templar, and they had rules to where they could not even do such a thing? So we know the Knights Templar played a major role in the Crusades. And when you really pay attention, we had basically 9 Crusades. 8 or 9. Sometimes they put the 9th with the 8th. And the Crusades basically stretch from the 10th century all the way to the 13th century, and also stretch from England all the way over to India. That's where you see the war with the Mamluk dynasty, which is basically Persians, and the area that's now part of India. And these Persians were basically Sunni Muslims. And basically what happened is, you had, when Rome went out to push Catholicism, all these religions was being pushed. You had people, really believe in these religions. And you had people, base their life and start basing culture and everything they did, their societies, rulers, leaders, start basing everything off these religions. That was the purpose of it, for them to start basing their civilization on these religions. And then the people at the head of the religions would basically rule using the religions. So that would be the Pope and the Islamic leaders. But when people start questioning the actions of the Pope, one, and his authority, him keep giving himself more and more power and keep changing stuff and everything like that, people begin to question all this stuff. So you had the Crusades happen, where they basically went and just started wiping out people. You're talking about from 900 CE, all the way up to the 13th century, to 1270, I believe it was, when you have wars, just them constantly conquering, Europe and parts of Asia, the Middle East and everything like that. And it's basically, you have the Roman Empire and the Islamic Empire basically going out conquering the Middle East together. And then Rome, which was super powerful, which is another thing that's suspect. You would expect them in the beginning, the infancy of Islam, to wipe it out. They was powerful back then. But they basically went and wiped out and made way for Islam to come in and basically take over certain territories that Catholicism couldn't, because of its position. So as I talked about this before, you can't have Rome coming in there in certain places doing certain things, because then people are not going to be looking at them favorably. And since the beginning, you have always had Islam be this enemy, So now they have Islam do all the dirty work, and then they can point the finger at Islam, but then do nothing. And this is one of the problems that people had with the papacy. That was like, well, now what are you guys doing? Islam is growing and growing and doing all this. Why y'all not doing nothing about it? And a lot of people was questioning the Pope, like, what's up with that? But we know, really, as I talked about before, it was the Roman Empire that created Islam for that very purpose, to go out and conquer lands that they couldn't conquer, on their own. So now if you go back 1,000 years, you're going to find, world war, a war involving Christians and, Muslims. This is what you're going to find. It's the same thing today we see. All the world's war, the problems we keep having keep involving Islam for some reason. And that reason is really because Rome has been using them, for a long time to take care of their dirty work. It's crazy how, when you pay attention and look, that for all this time, we have these this tension between us and them, between the Americans and the Muslims. You go look at all the wars in Iraq and look at the whole Gulf War and everything like that. You keep seeing this tension, yet out of all of the Muslim countries that have been invaded and attacked and everything by America or whoever, nothing has been done to the Saudis. The Saudis running around, they cool as shit with everybody. They cool with the Bushes. You know, when the Bushes went in and invaded Iraq and everything like that and done everything, all the wars and bombings of Islamic people, the Saudis, nothing. Nothing happened to the Saudis. They cool with the Pope. You know, all this war going on, and you have Muslims killing each other, and you have Muslims and Christians killing each other, and Jews, and all this kind of war going on. But meanwhile, the leaders of Christianity, which is the Pope, and of Islam, which is the Saudis, you see them meeting all the time, kissing and hugging and shaking hands. You know, the Saudis are royal for some reason. Like, we're going to get into that. Like, how you a king. Like, how does that happen out of nowhere? And you have this camaraderie, it seems like. You got the Pope kissing the Quran, and they kissing each other's hand and all this and that. But meanwhile, all this war going on. All this stuff going on between America and Islam. And you have George Bush, the Bushes, being cool with these Islamic leaders. So, you know, it's something that you got to look at and say, yo, something is not right. So it's exactly like I said, they basically using the Muslims to go ahead and do the dirty work to get rid of the Islamic countries that is true to Islam, that is not going to join America, that really believe in the faith. They can't really go there and say, well, it's all bullshit that we created to take over the world and get them to join their side. A lot of these Islamic countries are truly Islamic, truly religious, and they stick to their faith. And a lot of these dudes just didn't want to buy in. So that's basically what we're seeing today. We're seeing them try to go in and take over these lands that they can't bring into their whole, New World Order thing. And that's basically what's taking place. So now I didn't have to get into this whole history. I could have just said that, the Crusades wasn't really about, getting rid of Islam, taking them out the Holy Land. It just was about, them, conquering shit and, conquest. Not about Muslims, but conquest. And I could have left it at that. But, you really got to get into stuff that proves your point. And, this is the problem. A lot of people don't really know the difference between, scholarship and truth and facts. Now, if I would just say that, oh no, it wasn't really about them getting rid of Muslims from the Holy Land, somebody is going to go Google the reason for the Crusades and then see, well, it says about getting rid of Muslims from the Holy Land. Then I'm going to get a comment down there for somebody saying, you don't know what you're talking about. It's about Muslims and this and that. Now, you can go online. You can read a whole bunch of shit about the Crusades and what it really was about and all this and that and everything like that. Or you can go find those very few books that make sense. Or you can find the very few articles that make sense, that fit with actual history. And this is the problem. People are so caught up in scholarship and they think that if it comes from a book, it has to be 100% true. And a lot of people is not really dealing with facts, proof, stuff that makes sense, that fits. It don't fit that you have the mighty Roman Empire allow Islam to, one, come about. That's one. Then to sustain itself for so long when they could have just wiped it out when it was using its profits. I mean, people really just don't want to go back to that basic, understanding. It came out of nowhere using the same profits as Catholicism. Hundreds of years, you got Rome. Then all of a sudden, you get these Muslims come out and use the same profits that Rome is using, that the Jews is using. So you would think that it would have been a war. I mean, they could have at least got together with the Jews to get rid of the Muslims. So why would they wait, damn near 300 years to even start a war? And I got into this before about how this thing was set up and planned. I'm not going to go into the whole thing now. But it's stuff you got to really look at as being suspect. So when you read that, it's because of, them trying to get Muslims out the Holy Land, it don't really fit when the Muslims are still there and when you look at everything else. So you got to dig deeper. And then when you find out that you got Muslims in a Knights Templar and that they would not have even attacked Muslims because of this, it's all suspect. And that's the thing. A lot of people want to just read something online and repeat exactly what they read. I mean, what are we doing this for? What's this shit about? Like, if we're going to accept everything that they tell us, it's no need to even calling yourself conscious or saying that you're conscious. My job, what I'm trying to do here is to get you to think, to question everything. That's what I feel my job is, to get you to question what we've been told, because we know they lie. We know the shit. It's a bunch of bullshit. And, history is written by the conquerors, not the conquered. Why would they give us any truth? Why would you expect any truth from them? So we can't go by a lot of these official books. We got to go by, written accounts of history that we can prove and substantiate. So when you go and look at proven history, you can see that, this is the fact. This is stuff that really happened, and that it don't really fit that they went after Islam. Because if you had this long war, even if you go by the first 4 crusades, the important ones, the so-called important ones that they say, if you go by the first 4 crusades, they could have wiped out Islam a long time ago. They could have wiped them out. Easy. But they didn't, and that's for a reason. So, a lot of the research I put out, I do so based upon, proof, facts, truth. I don't go by scholarship. I can give a damn about what the book says all the time. I don't always go by the book. I go by what fits, and then I look for proof to support that, and then to put it out there, And a lot of people, they want to just go by exactly what the book says and exactly what they tell us, knowing that they lie and that it don't make sense. Well, the book said it, so it must make sense. You got to be the wrong one, even though it don't make sense. So this is what I deal with sometimes. But I wanted, to say that because a lot of times if I'm long-winded or if I'm explaining too much, I do so. Because as soon as I don't explain enough, people, I get the backlash. So I try to explain and break everything down, even if it kind of go off topic or subject for a little bit. I know I don't have to explain this now, but I just want to put it out there that I do that sometimes. But, I try to put as much information behind, what I'm reading, because like I said, I can't all the time put the books up, so I try to find equivalent information online so I can just, show you guys what I'm talking about. Because anybody who does real research, if you really do research, stuff click in your head. If you really read books, stuff click in your head when you read something. Like it's almost like a system that when you start reading about a certain period in history, then you can tell what fits and don't fit. If 7 scholars said something, and then you read this one book about this guy who said something else, you got to look at that and do a comparison, because the one guy could be right. The 7 guys could be liars. You don't know. So now you got to do research. This is the kind of stuff that happens when you're doing extra research and you're not just repeating exactly what Google says, which in this case, I just proved is obviously not the case. You Google, why did the Crusades begin? It tells you clearly. Muslims, in the Holy Land. But when you go through the actual research, what I just showed you, it clearly couldn't have been the case. And the fact that Muslims are still in power and still in Jerusalem today should tell you that, something is more to it. It's either not just that or not that at all. And I'm saying here, it's not that at all, that they were basically working together. And as I said, whoever controls the books, the history books, controls history.